Only a couple of weeks ago, Yahoo announced that they'd fallen victim to the biggest data breach in history. The account information, including names, email addresses, passwords, and phone numbers of at least 500 million user accounts, were stolen in 2014. This incident serves as yet another reminder that cybercrime is widespread. It's not going anywhere, and education is needed to ensure that company data and board security is safeguarded. Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Ryman, Director of Sales for Diligent. I'm also joined today by Howard Cabillos, Information Security and Privacy Architect here at Diligent. Today, we want to talk to you about Cyberthreat, the 3 misconceptions that undermine the security of the board, and the steps companies can take to strengthen the security of the board. Some of the issues we will tackle today are the growing rate and impact of cyber attacks, 3 common boardroom practices that are undermining board security, how to assess board security, and how to leverage technology for better security practices. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them using the questions pane on the right of your screen. If time permits, we will try to answer them at the end of the presentation. One very quick word about Diligent as an organization. We've been providing board portal technology for the last 15 or so years. We have offices worldwide in 12 different locations. We have 5 data centers located all over the world, including the United States, Canada, and Germany. We are the world leader in the board portal space. We have over 4,500 companies and over 140,000 board members worldwide that are making the transition to digital communication and collaboration solutions. We have over a 50% market share in the industry and a 99% retention rate, which is pretty remarkable in our space, but in business in general. Before we start, I'd like to take a look at the agenda for this presentation. We will be covering how to assess your board, the 3 misconceptions that undermine board security, how to evaluate board security, and how to set a secure example. Let's get started. At first, let's have a quick glance at why cybersecurity is the #1 topic in the boardroom. A company that has fallen victim to a successful cyber attack not only experiences financial losses, stolen data, and intellectual property, it can also damage trade and reputation for the company.
That's
Howard,
right,
do you have any comments on that?
That's right, Scott. Unfortunately, there are many hacking tools available for free on the internet, and given that hackers will charge as little as $500 to hack the corporate email accounts of executives and board members, I think it's critical to ask, can you really afford to risk not strengthening your company's defenses?
The first step in mitigating these threats is to assess your board. As decision makers for the organization, boards need to understand the threats that their organization faces, but this can be difficult. Many directors may not realize just how digital the business has become. Directors may not appreciate how the convergence of IT, enterprise technology, and operations technology has shaped the business and led to an increase in opportunities for hackers to gain access. Hierarchical structures within the organization are also a consideration. The fact that the board is positioned above the organization means that the employees responsible for the organization's security may not feel confident enough to report back any misgivings that they may have about the firm's security scheme. Research by Deloitte and Systemec suggests that in some regions, up to 70% of IT decision makers lack confidence in their company's security policies, and concludes that more than 2/3 of organizations lack the ability to protect themselves against an attack. Would you agree, Harold?
Yes. Some security teams actually are not aware that the board security falls within their role. And in addition, security portals don't follow the company's organization's own security policies and practices. Directors and personnel need to remain diligent in their approach to communication technology, but the most secure working practices can still be undermined by the misconceptions associated with the technology and workflows in use.
To avoid directors working in a manner that can undermine your board's security, you need to consider the following misconceptions. Email is secure, password protection equals security, and in-house data storage is more secure. Harold, are there any of these that pose more of a risk than others?
Well, each one of these is a threat, Scott. They present it by themselves a unique challenge for any organization to secure themselves against. However, combined together, it makes it very hard for an organization to protect ourselves.
So let's start with misconception number 1. Email is secure. While email may be convenient, quick, and easy as a means of communicating confidential information, email is simply not fit for that purpose. With email, you can't restrict the forwarding of content. In addition, resending a sent message is difficult, so as soon as an email is sent, you've effectively lost control of the information.
I would also add, from a security perspective, Scott, that free email servers are also insecure and vulnerable to phishing attacks, password hacks, and other exploits. As mentioned earlier, the Yahoo breach was the biggest in our history. Our internal data tells us that at least 1 in 4 boards is a director with an active Yahoo email address. We cannot stress enough that using outdated, insecure tools to manage intellectual property, finance, and strategic information material puts that data at greater risk from a breach.
Harold, which are some of the most common tactics or techniques hackers use to infiltrate the corporate email accounts of execs and board members?
Well, one of the most common methods for attacking these members is phishing scams through email. Email is widely used. It's convenient for contacting and sending information. And 9 out of 10 times, these messages are sometimes sent in a hurry, and we can't really control who the destination is.
Okay, on to misconception number 2. Password protection equals security. While it's not unreasonable to assume that adding a password to a PDF renders it inaccessible to unauthorized users, a rudimentary source across any popular search engine yields millions of results to show anyone how to bypass PDF security.
Right. If you actually run a search on Google, you'll find thousands of results documenting how frighteningly simple it is to breach this apparently secure medium. The truth is that PDF technology is not secure, and you should not just rely on that.
So Harold, what are the security differences between paper, PDF, and low-cost board portals?
Well, Scott, the challenge with paper is it's very convenient to share information. However, we have to also consider how we're going to protect that data once it's printed and there's hard copies laying around. PDFs are great for sharing that information, but they present their own unique challenges of that in trying to secure a PDF. We then have to manage passwords and share those passwords. And after sending a lot of that information, we really don't know where that final PDF is resting. And the challenge with low-cost portals, Scott, is that they appeal because of their pricing or flexibility, but 9 out of 10 times they don't meet an organization's security control policies. They don't provide the auditing and logging that's required. And the majority of times, there's just no way to provide the same level of control that an organization actually needs.
Okay, on to the final misconception. In-house data storage is more secure. Perhaps the most important misconception to consider relates to data storage, specifically that data stored in-house is more secure than that stored with a third party. In truth, the opposite often applies. For example, in-house solutions rely on the organization's own administrators to access and manage data, but with 55% of cyber attacks being carried out by insiders, this access can prove catastrophic. Also, technically and operationally, the organization's own security program and infrastructure may not be sufficient to protect data from today's threats. Harold, could you explain to us how data is stored at Diligent?
Sure. Diligent restricts data access to authorized end client users only. Our team has zero access to client data. Furthermore, we have fully audited security policies and procedures, providing backup data and disaster recovery functions, as well as security monitoring above and beyond the capabilities of most other organizations. Our architecture provides an isolated and compartmentalized section for each of our customers. We leverage multiple keys in the protection of the data. Our data is encrypted in flight and also at rest. And as I mentioned before, the key is that we don't provide access to that information. The customer protects that information.
So let's talk about how to evaluate your board's security. Harold, I'll hand this one over to you.
Sure. Leaders who want to assess their board cybersecurity practices can do so by asking 3 simple questions. How is the board data stored? How strong are the locks protecting that data? And who controls the keys? Any security evaluation should begin with examining who controls the data. Not knowing where information is and having an inability to control where it goes means that the solution is highly insecure. This is why emailing board documents as PDF files is not a secure solution. Files can be accidentally forwarded by directors to others outside the board or housed in personal email accounts with minimal consumer-level security on systems that the vendors themselves admit should not be regarded as secure. The same is true for cloud-based solutions where your files could be on any server in the file sharing network and where you have no way of knowing exactly where they are. The success of cloud solutions is based on the assumption that they are secure, whereas in fact, high-profile cases of hacking, such as revelations of passwords and celebrity photos from cloud service providers, demonstrates just how flawed that assumption of security is. Let's mention one last thing, the difference between a cloud-based solution and a hosted portal solution, because I think it's very important that we distinguish the two. Although hosted portals do seem cloud-like and often mistakenly referred to as cloud-based storage, there are important differences. And hosted board portals carefully control where their data is stored and keep the information of each hosted organization segregated. I cannot emphasize enough that knowing where your data is one of the key assets in defining what security means to you in the protection of an organization's data. We move on to the next simple question that we need to ask everybody when they're assessing a board portal security. How strong are the locks? Knowing the whereabouts of your data is absolutely crucial, as I mentioned before. So too, however, is ensuring that only authorized users can access it. This can be accomplished by encrypting the data, converting the data into a string of meaningless zeros and ones so that only those in possession of the correct digital key can decipher it. Paper board backs have no digital key at all. Everyone who holds a copy can read the information. While it may be true that PDFs or emails are stored on file sharing systems can be encrypted and password protected, it puts the onus on the user or whoever is distributing and receiving the material to manage those password protocols. Even then, PDF documents remain vulnerable to brute force attacks and using readily available software. Higher quality hosted board portals typically use AES 256 encryption, and since there are more possible combinations than stars in the universe, it's safe to say that they would be almost an eternity for even the most determined hackers using the most advanced technology to crack the code. All right, who controls the keys to your information? A strong portal provides a method to never lose control of those documents. Restricting access, knowing where that information is going, very important to securing your data.
Now that we've evaluated your security, let's talk about some ways we can set an example of security for your organization.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity, particularly the security of the board's own information and data, must be a paramount consideration. Having a secure, intuitive portal handling all the board's information, communication, and collaboration facilities provide better security and improve working practices. The board's failure to uphold high security standards can undermine the security scheme of the organization as a whole, whereas a board that leads by example increases the effectiveness of the organization's security and places it in a robust position in the face of increasing threats.
Thanks, Harold. So let's recap and quickly explain how you can leverage technology to minimize threats and secure the board. By adopting a board portal such as Diligent, you can secure your company's data, you can keep content within the group, you can get the mobility without the worry, you can choose your data hosting location, and you can control versions anywhere. Let's open this up to questions now. Do our attendees have any questions they'd like to ask? Sure, I see a question here about Diligent security across devices. And now with Diligent, you do have the ability to make it into kind of a true closed loop system where you can go all the way down to the individual user in terms of who you'd allow to print and export and who you wouldn't. So if you really did want to keep this portal as a true closed container, even that material that had been securely taken offline couldn't be emailed or opened in any other apps or printed. So you really would have no extraneous copies of this book, and the publisher would remain in control at all times and be able to send that information out and pull it back as they please. And that overriding theme of the ability to be a true closed loop system, especially across devices, is unique to Diligent in the board portal world, and a lot of times why we're chosen from a security perspective. All right, so I'm happy to answer any other questions offline. I think we're going to wrap up here. There are several ways to learn a little bit more about this topic and about board portals in general. If you'd like to get a quick 5-minute demo of a board portal to get an idea of what the solution looks like, please send me an email, and I'm happy to set something up. Or you can visit www.diligent.com to check out white papers, success stories of all sorts of companies public, private, nonprofit, small, big. I wanted to just finish by thanking you so much for attending and giving an extra special thanks to Harold for joining us today and sharing some of his expertise. Other than that, have a wonderful day, everyone.